I think, first of all, that it may be very much worth our time to make a comment upon the intrinsic and undisplaced connection to the realization of soul and basis and being and life, which in the direct expression and conception of so many of these natural involvements of foundational and culminating participation and union and witness give us ample measure to awaken unto the proportions of their most necessary, involving, and instructing for us truth. For as the situation and state and being and continent cause requires this foundational, this direct, this essential involvement of union and communion, being and course of expression in life, then as we can see in life, in a way that is so intensive that it most customarily avoids the hardened edge of our conception and treatment of it, that which is awakening in the life, which unfolds and delivers, which gives its content, integration, communion, recollected seat and soul of unalienated self-law in life, assumes this concentrated, continent condition that doesn't have an arena of existence, a situation of interaction, a means of convergence, a being of awakening, without that directness which is its everything, its all, its most natural and incumbent direct inclusion of foundational peace and fulfillment of state and comprising. And so many of these traditions voice and awake and rouse to the ultimate message, the ultimate meaning, the ultimate beatitude, being the same as the way, the pilgrim priest, the truth of the uncaused basis of culminating assumption in life, being the end in itself, the medium in itself, the recollection to its own directly incumbent basis of being, life, state, seat and soul of comprising. And so renewed again and again in the tone, the expression, the experience, the conception, the ripening realization to the truth and disclosure that it is in its innermost basis of being to be founded, rouses again and again into the necessity for direct and undisplaced relation, of ripening into the composure of fulfilling relation and life, the innermost state of being to this conception and truth that is in it founded. And so it is only in a situation of abstracted and dislocated confusion, contrivance, accidents, objectifications that lose the life of their being and nature of function, that the idea of false causation, of depending on this, of projecting that, loses, and necessarily loses, all that can only come through direct and inherent ripening and fulfilling the being and life that it is in it founded. For nothing avails the plant or the seed except fully living the origin and end and communion and cause in the knower, in the truth of what is kindredly awoken unto the eternal, in its being of basis founded. For that quintessentially is what it is for something to be an uncaused cause, that the unresisted, foundational, original and full expression of life fills the universal communion and conversion, whose expression is not alienated from the cause and the directness of the cause, which is the foundation of state, being, disclosure, existence, and living participation or living return, which through only its medium and means can be founded. For if a plant tried to contrive to do something in an end in itself, in a leaf or a flower or a root, separated from the uncaused cause which is in it comprising, then everything the leaf was, everything the leaf could do, everything that it could be associated to, would lose the medium and means, the object and revelation of truth in the self-law that ripens the wedder, the possessor, the holder, the knower and wealth, sight and witness, into its own fulfillment of disclosure founded. Without that fulfillment of disclosure founded, everything would be a denial of the reality of that which is uncaused, uncreate, directly inherent into and unto it. And so, if we cannot come to that condition of nature and being and rousing and disclosure and state, which comes to the possession of that supernal in us, then life is kept from living. The foundation of fulfilled relation is kept from its own expression and nature and state of founding. And so behind these conceptions and rousings and awakenings in the Rig Veda or in other disclosures we can see founded, not being made an objectified content to be used in coercion or possession, but a rousing of fulfilled consciousness or realization to the innermost conduit, thrall, realization and reception that it is in it founded, allows that which is this truth in nature to be its continuum and cause, connection and disclosure, means of fulfillment and expression founded, which it doesn't take to coerce unto itself, but it ripens its full life, it goes on the way, it opens to the undivided bliss of the Godhead at the seat and soul of parent cause, which is into the innermost basis of all being founded. And a large part of the reason why we fail to come to the heart and conception and appropriate disclosure of limit of these things is because we have failed to trust such directness, such spontaneity, such redolent richness of life, which could perceive, to put it in certain words, the uncreate and foundational fact of the Godhead liberating its own unconditioned entirety, fulfilling its self-expressive wedding to the continuum of unseparated entirety for itself through all things. And the waking and the rousing of these proportions and perceptions and direct disclosures of freed life and witness, just as the life occupying each seed must have centrality, must have direct and undivided disclosure, mantling at home into the archetype which is its sole pilgrim priest and soul of disclosure and founding. So the seemingly create is always resolved by the end in itself of its true being in the uncreate. This marvel, this majesty, this grandeur, this harmony of intellectual, moral, spiritual undivision rouses its superior and undivided essence of disclosure in such a state and being and course, which is to the heart, the essence, the foundational self-law of truth, into all things fathomed. So the way that degeneration of life always occurs is everything always consists in this call, in this invocation, in this presence of purifying life and direct continuum and communion. And awakening to this end in itself only finds the false patterns of assumed interaction, of putting the face over the life of its truth, leading to attempts at possession, profession, forced inculcation, sophistry, alienation, estrangement, inversion, which, in the very manner of their forced propagation and progression, deny the self-revelation and resident perfection and the medium and means of its direct recourse of life that is in it founded. For that which is occupying the foot, the eye, the limb, the ear, in the shared reality of the one organism, if they each staked their independent and separated manifold existence of claims as alienated entities, then there is no chain of repercussion which can make them whole. It's only the unalienated truth of the life and the unalienated cause and the unalienated cause being mountain merge and truth of undefiled connection, which can see past the horizon to the living and fulfilled rapture, samadhi, balance of unseparated articulation in bliss, which is indestined as continent effect in the cause to be roused and elicited and fathomed. And so the very manner of our articulation and treatment only recognizes forced perpetuation, a dislocation that imposes its accidental aspects over the truth of the inhering life's connection of entirety. And keeping such a manner of expression denies in these words, the pilgrim priest, the carrier, that which is archetypal, inherent, fulfilled, living, and all residing. It denies the living cause to the living life itself by its false manner of expression and treatment, which doesn't allow the end in itself to be the communion, conversion, cultivation of basis and cause. And so, rather than the ripening life of direct access and immersion, ripening the truth of eternity in the organism, in the plant, in the unforced, fulfilled conception that takes its full constellation founded, rather than ripening direct and unforced and uncaused access, it acts as if the organism could coerce the universe, had to force itself upon things rather than harmonizing to the truth of the revealed reality of being in itself, and hence acts as inversion, as a stranger. And so to allow the cultivation of the meaning, intention, inhabitation, fulfillment of all horizons, happenings, to come to the heart and seat and soul of life, requires that we awaken the full meaningful perfection, integrity, realization and reclamation of origin, of the truth of the harmony of the effect in the cause, that we don't take the appearance, the semblance, the dislocated or torn apart accidents of expressions, momentary and transient self, for the wisdom and witness, for the communion in convocation, for the purposeful, undivided directness of unalienated life that is in us and for us to be fathomed. For history affords us many instances of seeing profound and deepened intuitions by patterns of hardened interaction and grasping, quickly lost by any forced or false abstraction or contrivance from the integral, the moral, the meaningful directness of the end in itself, which is in it founded. Even a situation like that of Pythagoras or Socrates, or as we can see through many other occasions and margins, even to the scientific revolution and others, disenfranchises the consciousness, the end in itself, this all-comprehending enrichment of directness, because people were at that time incapable of participating in such a ripened cultivation, and people came to pretend to possess it under the guise of false inheritance and contrivance. And the delicacy of these dimensions of not imposing the transient over the end in itself, not imposing the accidents of mind over the uncaused cause of it in itself, which is alone weather and unison, medium and means of comprising, is the only way not to entangle and ensnare the medium and soul and communion of Brahman and Brahman, of undefiled integral love, which to the expression of the continent entirety of its living life is unfathomed.